So once a month, a bookmobile, I don't know if anybody remembers bookmobiles, a bookmobile would roll out in front of this little clapboard white country school that I went to.
Basically a portable library, a library on wheels.
Yeah, and we would just relish the moment. We were told days ahead of time, the bookmobile's coming next week. And I remember going out, and it was better than an ice cream truck, that bookmobile. We had no books. The reason I'm saying that is I have often dreamt about driving around the country with a bookmobile that teaches American imperialism. We need a class on U.S. imperialism. Why do I say that? Because as you're waving the flag yesterday and your arm is still tired, you have to realize that that has been our history. At war, 224 years out of 239, 93% of the time, we have been at war. The term imperialism, has been taken out of history books. The publishing companies in Texas refuse to even use the word imperialism. Well, let me just give you, as we are reeling from the show of jingoism yesterday, the army tanks and the endless accolades to the military, the fact that the military has done nothing but enslave, overthrow democratic governments, responsible for millions of deaths in our contemporary time for needless wars. What about the freedom that Assange didn't have because he blew the whistle on a helicopter pilot massacring, I think it was 13 people, caught on tape, which a journalist thought he had the freedom to put out and display in front of the world, talking about Chelsea Manning, who's now in prison, who because of that whistleblowing truth, I remind you, freedom of truth, was sentenced to 35 years in prison, 7 which she served, which almost killed her. Now she's back in. She's facing a huge amount of fines, outrageous fines, on the edge of bankruptcy. Her health has gone to hell. She was tortured incessantly with death threats, but also actually physically tortured. I'm not even going down Assange's path. I'm going down to the woman that was responsible for letting us see this wanton massacre by a helicopter pilot. They now have termed it collateral murder. Not collateral damage, collateral murder. Our act of imperialism.
Let me read this here, Jack. I'm getting this from Wikipedia. On April 22nd, 2019, a federal appeals court upheld the trial court's decision, denied a request by Manning that she be released on bail. She was held in contempt of court on March 8th because she refused to testify to a federal grand jury. So she was released on May 9th after the grand jury's term expired. She was immediately served with another subpoena to appear before a new grand jury on May 16th. She said that she would refuse to testify. Of course, she refused to testify. She was returned to jail for the 18-month term of the grand jury, and additionally, a fine of $500 for each day she spends in jail over 30 days, and $1,000 for each day she spends in jail over 60 days. Isn't there something in the Constitution that outlaws this practice?
You'd think.
Eighth Amendment, folks? Any legal scholars out there want to chime in?
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, here is the Jack Prince Southpaw definition of freedom in the United States. You are free to be dumb. You are free to have amnesia. You are free to be stupid as hell. You're free to be dumb and overlook these kinds of breaches of freedom. Assange was sentenced to 175 years for telling the truth about war crimes. 175 years. This is after the torture both of these people were subject to. Now, I again, go back to my bookmobile. This is just a roving truck that's going to teach American imperialism. And it's going to, and real briefly, it's going to have the following list. First of all, we're going to start out with, guess what? We're going to talk about the, do I dare say, the Spanish-American War imperialism. Hawaii, the Philippines, where a guy named Kipling, I'll bring a little literature into it, a guy named Kipling wrote a poem to get the last few Americans who might have resistance to going over and invading helpless Filipinos, wrote a poem called, of all things, The White Man's Burden. If you think the manifest destiny is filled with absolute imperialist racism, read The White Man's Burden. The savages over there, it's our job to go and save them from their own stupidity. The Rudyard Kipling, I kid you not. Nobody knows about this crap. They know it's time for fireworks, beer, and raise the flag and salute the Blue Angels flying over in the billion-dollar planes, but no sense of the truth. You're free. One more time. Freedom. Bush has granted you the right to be stupid as hell. Stupid as he is.
You mean Trump? You said Bush.
Yeah,
you always tie Bush in with Trump.
Yeah.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Trump and Bush
have
given you the right to be dumb. Free dumb.
I do have good news for you, though, Jack. Bookmobiles are still in use. This is according to Wikipedia. Operated by libraries, schools, activists, and other organizations. Although some feel the bookmobile is an outmoded service, giving reasons like high cost, advanced technology, impracticality, and ineffectiveness, others cite the ability of the bookmobile to be more cost-efficient than building more branch libraries would be, and its high use among its patrons as support for its continuation. They're now making all-electric and hybrid electric chassis bookmobiles.
I want to buy one. The hell of ice cream trucks.
The Internet Archive runs its own bookmobile to print out-of-copyright books on demand.
Why not?
Ain't that something?
Bookmobile. And we'll have a menu board. Instead of ice cream, chocolate swirl, we will have up there, we'll have My Lai Vietnam, we'll have No Gun Re Korea, which you probably don't even realize what it is. We'll have the Bear River Indian Massacre. Take your pick.
Gulf of Tonkin.
The Panama Canal, the Bay of Pigs, Buffalo Soldiers. You want to understand what Buffalo Soldiers are? You want to understand how Kipling's work and Manifest Destiny led to the neoconservatives? The neoconservatives that think it's our right to go and take over the whole damn world? You want to make that connection? We'll have that for dessert. How much is this bookmobile? Get a price for me, Darren.
You're starting to sound like the commercial. Hey, I need a builder. Do you know any? Yeah. Well, can you get me 3 estimates? And God. Yeah, let's talk freedom a little bit here, because your government, the conservatives, are trying to stifle your freedoms. I have this story. This is out of Bloomberg Law. Listen to this. A rotating menagerie of inflatable rats and an inflatable cockroach can continue to stand outside a trio of Staten Island grocery stores as part of a union's protest. That's a ruling from a federal judge overturning the National Labor Relations Board. You know, the government agency that's supposed to protect workers?
Oh, yeah.
They're not protecting workers. They're protecting employers. Let me continue here. The National Labor Relations Board, the federal agency that enforces U.S. labor laws, had asked the court to issue a preliminary injunction that would put an end to a months-long protest by a New York construction union. The labor organization is speaking out against the use of scabs in the building of a new ShopRite grocery store. They actually use the term non-union labor. No, we call them scabs around here. If you're non-union, you're a scab. U.S. District Judge Nicholas Garalfas denied the request July 1st, siding with the Laborers International Union of North America affiliated Construction and General Building Laborers Local 79. Garalfas wrote in his decision, quote, as a threshold matter, the court notes the Local 79's peaceful use of stationary, inflatable rats and a cockroach to publicize a labor protest is protected by the First Amendment, end of quote. The judge went a step further, warning the NLRB that a federal court enjoining expressive conduct would be untenable and raise serious constitutional concerns. Union attorney Tamir Rosenblum said Local 79 agreed with the decision and found it really well reasoned. An NLRB representative could not immediately be reached for comment. NLRB General Counsel Pete Robb, a Trump administration appointee, is seeking a reinterpretation of federal labor laws that in certain cases would classify the use of inflatables as unlawful coercion of businesses that don't directly employ protesting workers and overrule First Amendment considerations. You know what? The rat has a name. You know that, right, Jack? Scabby the Rat. The federal judge refused to find merit in the National Labor Relations Board's injunction request, saying that facts suggest Local 79 is not in violation of the National Labor Relations Act. The union did not engage in picketing or coercive activity, Garofis said. Picketing a secondary employer is forbidden under federal labor laws, and the NLRB sought to get the union's actions recognized as such. Despite the Labor Board's federal court setbacks, the case is still working its way through the agency. An administrative law judge is expected to look at the case in mid-July, according to Rosenblum. After an administrative law judge reviews the case, it can then be brought before the board in Washington for review. Board review could yield a change in interpretation of how federal labor laws apply to inflatable animals during secondary protests. Another case involving the use of an inflatable ran in Philadelphia is already before the board and could be looked at as soon as this summer, making new board law possible even sooner. Garofis' decision rebutting the NLRB's case is likely to have only made it more likely that an administrative law judge would side with the union, Rosenblum said. This judge is phenomenal. I wonder how he got appointed, who appointed him. But yeah, they're trying to take away your right of speech, folks. Right to peaceably assemble. This is basic First Amendment stuff.
Yes, it is. Yeah, how absolutely contradictory for the United States that took the land from millions of indigenous people, enslaved millions of people to come and work that land. And what does the 4th of July freedom mean to a black man, Darren?
Probably not a damn thing.
Well, Frederick Douglass has more IQ probably than the entire cabinet of George Bush, answered this way.
and Trump.
That doesn't even show up, probably. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impotence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, liberty and freedom, Darren, right? Mm-hmm. Hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Pass the potato salad. Thank you. Incredible but accurate, real display of the history of the United States that we're going to celebrate with armament in our capital. How about this? Let's go back to the bookmobile real quickly.
Yeah.
What other things, and I'm not talking about imperialism here, how many things have been taken out of the diet of American students' minds, and Americans for that matter, that were commonplace at one time? That we say, wait a second, isn't there a right somewhere? You said it this morning. Isn't there something in the Constitution that prohibits the Republican Party from going out and selling tickets to this function yesterday on the 4th, which they have never done in history? Isn't there some way we can force these people that were subpoenaed? And Trump said, to hell with it. You don't have to go. You don't have to show up, Jared. You don't have to show up for the... Isn't there... We're like in a country that we don't know where we belong any longer. We had a foundation of understanding. It's been obliterated.
Yeah, well, I was mentioning with Chelsea Manning about the $1,000 a day fine past 60 days would be a violation of the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It prohibits the federal, state, and local governments or any government, corporation, private enterprise, group, or individual from imposing excessive bail, excessive fines, or cruel and unusual punishment.
I know. I see things on Facebook. I wonder where the hell these people go to school.